always been a time for gathering in the longhouse and sharing information around the fire. This is our contribution to that tradition. I'm a little hesitant to talk about fitness because my fitness goals really just have to do with being able to get out there and do the things that I want to, which is maybe a different bar than a lot of folks for whom it's a religion, and their fitness goals include not just being able to do things, but like certain philosophies and theories of fitness. But nonetheless, that I found that there's a lot of holes in what the kind of training a lot of folks do as applied to backpacking, as applied to moving through the backcountry with a load. So I'm going to just talk about the things I found that work for me, and perhaps they'll work for you, or perhaps you want to add them to what it is that you're already doing. So first of all, cardio fitness. This is counterintuitive, but for whatever reason, I've seen time and time again that people whose fitness regimen consists of going out for an hour run fall flat on their face on the trail. I suspect it has to do with they're not actually getting the burst cardio they need, and it probably also has to do with the requirements of moving with weight is just very different than doing no more than moving your body. So what I found works well is high intensity interval training. That seems to be very applicable to the trail. Certain kinds of martial arts. If you're training 3-minute rounds, 30 seconds off, 3-minute rounds, that's very applicable. That builds good cardio capacity that seems to be applicable to the mountains. Mountain biking is something else that does that same sort. Mountain biking hills. If all you're doing is setting a good pace and keeping it, that's not going to work out so much as like, okay, I'm riding, here's a little hill, I've got to flip and sprint up that hill or really be at high cardio output, then I get a rest on the next flat, here's the next hill. So that I've found is very applicable from a cardio standpoint. And then of course, train like you actually want to perform. If you have access to hills and a pack, that's really the best thing you can do. But those two other things I found make a big difference. Any kind of high intensity interval training, 3-minute rounds, mountain biking, that's good stuff. Another huge hole is all of the little stabilizer muscles. It's easy to get on an elliptical, easy to get on a Stairmaster, and you're going to build your gross muscle groups. But even hiking on groomed trail, but more so off trail, is going to make is really going to require a lot more stabilization. The only good way to do it is to get out on the trail. If you don't have access to that, in the gym, the Bosu balls, you can build some stabilizer strength using those. That's an option for you. The next thing is hip joint, A, mobility, and B, strength. Ellipticals, Stairmasters, even biking don't do nearly as much for hip mobility and hip strength as well, martial arts I found do a very good job, but those other things don't do as much as is required for on the trail. Really, kicking based martial arts is the best thing I've found outside of a trail environment to build the hip flexor strength and mobility that you need. Not that kicking has a whole lot of martial applicability, but man, it sure does a great job for training your body. So the next thing to talk about is endurance. Being out on the trail requires a type and level of endurance that it's really hard to replicate anywhere but being on the trail. And even if you have that endurance, know that you will get to a point out on the trail where your conditioning is falling short and you've just got to use attitude to get through. That's just the way it is. Some of it is just straight up hard and there's nothing you can do about that. So be prepared for that mentally. Do what you can mentally. Again, high intensity interval training I found is a pretty good mental conditioner because it also takes your body very quickly to the point where you're past what you can do and you're still performing nonetheless. So I found that that's particularly valuable in town to do that sort of training. And again, that comes from mountain biking certain kinds of terrain. It comes from martial arts, classic 3-minute training rounds, and then gym time, the structured Tabata intervals, those sorts of things. And then finally, and this is something that is easily overlooked, is foot toughness. So there's foot strength, which you can definitely build. Like if you're mountain biking, do not clip in, because what you're doing is robbing your body of the ability to build ankle strength, foot strength, all those sorts of things. It may be efficient from a cycling standpoint, but it's actually, you're doing your body a disservice. So definitely use platform pedals if you're going to use mountain biking to get ready. And then if you're in a gym environment, use the lightest, least supportive shoes that you can, because you're going to build foot strength. Now, once you get on the trail, all that changes. You want real boots. At least in my estimation. That's the subject of another lesson. But for a training standpoint, go with as light a stuff as you can to build foot strength. Now, there's foot strength, and then there's foot toughness, the toughness of your skin. And there's some tricks that I've never tried, rubbing alcohol on your feet, those sorts of things. But really, the only thing I've found for foot toughness is to hike in your actual hiking shoes on uneven terrain. That's the only thing you can do, and it makes a big difference, because if your skin gets abraded, you start getting blisters, that can shut you down very quickly on the trail. And conversely, if you have properly toughened feet, it's not something you ever have to deal with, and you can get out and make a lot more miles. So that's maybe the only thing that there's no real good shortcuts to, but do not overlook it. Hike in your actual hiking boots on uneven terrain. Something else that's very important is balance. This is something you wouldn't think about. If all you're doing is trail hiking, it may not be as applicable, but for off-trail hiking, crossing logs on streams, working your way across talus slopes, being able to balance with weight is actually a really big deal. Again, martial arts is great for that. You can do structured balance training in the gym, and there's all kinds of regimens for that. Just don't overlook it, because it's going to come into play, and the more time you spend off trail, the more relevant it's going to be. So that's it. Those are the things that I found that make a big difference. First of all, getting your burst cardio, that's really important, and high intensity interval training's a good way to do that. Second, all those little stabilizer muscles. Third, just having mental toughness. Fourth, making sure your feet are properly tough. And fifth, the balance training. Most of all, just get out there and get with it. Any kind of conditioning is going to be better than none, and don't get too wrapped around the axles about it. Get yourself strong and use the mountains as a measure for where you stand.